Have you ever had a champion in a deal, but then got blindsided when the business went to a competitor or just didn't happen altogether? Well, what if I told you that you were probably outsold? Look, the first time I was told by a manager that I had gotten outsold, I wanted to knock him out. I didn't appreciate the judgment. I knew I had a champion, so it wasn't my fault that I didn't win. But what I truly didn't appreciate was that I had actually failed my champion. Over that lunch conversation with my manager, he explained what would provide me a level of empathy and purpose that's carried me through tens of millions in sales, and I'm gonna share it with you. In the last of this series on my 5 elite sales habits to building and winning with champions, I'm gonna explain how to avoid getting outsold by empowering a champion.
Normal is overrated.
I want you to become your champion for a moment. The first thing I want you to think about is, what is the natural buying process for how they come to bring your business to closure? What are the most common steps they have to go through, the protocols they usually need to meet? And who are the different roles in their organization that they need to work with to get deals done? Okay, so you can even pause the video now and write down that buyer's journey from formally selecting the vendor to closing the agreement. I'll wait right here while you go do that. Okay, so the second thing I want you to ask yourself is, what are the typical alternative solutions being considered? Some will be direct competitors, others just different ways of solving the problem. And of course, you'll need to consider the current solutions that they might just stick with, not change anything at all. Okay, feel free to pause again and write those down. I'll wait. Oh, you're back. All right, last question. For those alternative solutions, who are the people, the roles, the personas that would most often be their champion? And that reminds me, just one more question. Just why would they consider being those other solutions champion? Is it something about their capabilities, their user experience, their price? Now that you've gotten all that information in your head and keep being your champion, I want you to be the person who you, as a seller, would be relying on to execute the deal, considering those internal processes, protocols, and people. And I want you to visualize what that experience would feel like as if it's happening to you. You see, we sellers, we're just human beings ourselves, and we humans are survivors. We protect ourselves, we avoid pain. So it's natural that when we get to the end of a deal, especially if we're there with a champion that we trust, it's common for us to pull back a bit, put in less work, focus on our own experience, and just let the champion do their thing. Well, I want you to ask yourself, just what do most of our champions do for a living? If someone asked them that at a party, would they say, I buy products and services? If so, then you must be selling a product for procurement. But is that what your champions really do? Or do they operate something, a technical or a business function? Point is, even if our champions love us and want us badly, should we assume that they're good at being our champion? Meaning, are they good at buying products and services inside their organization? And back to that buyer visualization I put you through. Just how hard is it for them to do that day job and lead a purchase process, especially when the decision is still contentious or competitive? So I want to introduce this concept to you that my manager shared with me that day, and it's called removing work off the champion's plate. And I don't mean helping them do their day job. What removing work off their plate means is that if we were to understand all of the work that a champion needs to get done in order to win the business for us, and that means approvals that need to get made, questions they need answered, information they need gathered, people they need to align with, real obstacles they need to overcome. Taking work off their plate means proactively doing anything and everything within our control to help our champions succeed. This is the last elite habit of empowering champions. And quite simply, it's what all elite sellers do to avoid getting outsold by either competitors who take the business from us or internal enemies who don't want our deal to happen. So I'm going to share with you these 3 champion empowerments so that you can avoid getting outsold. And the first champion empowerment is justification. Have you ever done a business case for a champion, or even had a champion tell you that the justification was already done earlier in the process, and yet your deal didn't get approved? Maybe it didn't get funding, or an alternative solution with different capabilities and pricing did get funding. So one, I'm sorry that happened, but don't let a painful experience go without gaining something from it. And what I want you to realize is that almost all purchase decisions, Even the smallest and least controversial ones will usually face new people and new questions at that final stage of closure. And remember, not all champions are the greatest sellers or even experienced at it. Most of the time, earlier stage business cases were more preliminary than even our champions believed. Remember when I said that we humans were wired for survival? Well, there are actually people in the final purchase process who are paid to protect the company. That's what their actual role is. They may all have different titles and functions, but their mission is the same. And our champion, well, they might be perceived on the inside as someone who's biased, who only has their personal interests in mind. So what's usually happening, even if our champion doesn't want to tell us that they were a bit too optimistic, is that our champion is being challenged internally with these 5 essential justification questions. What is the purpose of doing this? Why should we buy this solution? How is it any different than what we have now or these other alternatives? What positive impact will it make if we extend this investment? And 5, and just let me tell you that this is the one that we sellers like to avoid or minimize. Just what are the risks that the company would be taking on if we go with this solution? Disruption to the business, negative consequences. You see, the bottom line is that there will be a final justification that our champion will need to build, whether formal or just answering some tough questions. And the more aware we are of that justification, the better we can empower our champion to confidently and clearly address these 5 essential questions. Now, for the second champion empowerment, I want you to go back to an earlier string of questions I asked you. For those alternative solutions, who are the people, the roles, the personas that would most often be their champion? Why would they consider being those other solutions champion? And across our champion's internal process and protocols that they need to meet, who would be the people involved? If you haven't heard of it already, I want to introduce you to a term, the buying consensus. It's simple. The consensus or the consensus group are all the people involved who will need to get aligned on the purchase decision. Regardless of their role or interest, they will need to come to a consensus decision, meaning to be in general agreement. In agreement with who? Well, with our champion for starters and everyone else in the consensus. So this second elite level champion empowerment is the empowerment of consensus. And if consensus is about multiple people in a process coming to a general agreement, I want you to empower your champions around these 3 alignments of consensus. First, those people in the consensus will all need to be aligned on the prioritization of purpose. Remember, this is a collective group. They're all going to have their own different views on what's a priority and what's not. They'll also have their own view of the business that they see through their own lens. So not all champions will be great at articulating the purpose of what we sell through the right lens of each person in the consensus. What will most champions do? Well, they'll do what most of us sellers do. They'll selfishly position the purpose of sponsoring our solution by the priority that it serves for them. But this is a consensus of people who are all focused on their own survival. So how can we empower our champion with the clarity of our purpose message for all of those individual people and groups?
Quick pause. Now, if you're getting value, please hit subscribe, tap like, and drop a comment so more people can find this and I can help more people. Now let's get back to it.
Well, the first step will be curiously asking who those people are in the consensus group. And the second will be to uncover what purpose for our solution would cause those individuals to prioritize it. And while we're at it, we should ask this second alignment of consensus. Just what personal criteria would each individual in the consensus have for their function, use cases, or job charter? There are going to be different things that are important to them than our champion. So empowering our champion around this alignment on the personal decision criteria in the consensus is about directly asking what they are and then providing our champion messaging and whatever else is needed for those in the consensus to be satisfied. Now, if we're lucky enough to be brought into the final negotiation, that usually means that either we've been selected or we're at least in the top 2. And if that's the case, the negotiation phase, no matter how simple or complex it appears, it's not the time to stop working and just trust our champion to get it done. As I said, there are other people in this process whose primary purpose is to protect the business. So elite sellers actually step up their work and accountability for their champion in this last of the 3 empowerments. This is where they lead the empowerment of negotiation. In fact, an elite seller's ultimate objective at this phase is to always run a champion-based negotiation, one in which a seller and a champion are fully aligned and actively partnering through the negotiation until the deal closes. And this level of champion empowerment during a negotiation will include three things from a seller. One, communication. If both we and our champion are going to get through this negotiation successfully, we're going to need to communicate both regularly and openly. So elite sellers empower their champion by ensuring that they've agreed on a communication plan that includes things like regularly scheduled short calls and touch points, permission to text after hours with questions or issues, and most importantly, an agreement that we'll communicate with each other if things go sideways. Secondly, we empower the negotiation for a champion when we provide them the necessary messaging and information they need. This isn't done by just emailing our champion every piece of information they could possibly use. We should be asking them about the people and situations they'll be encountering. Our empowerment comes from the intellectual curiosity to learn just what questions those people will be asking, what concerns or trust issues might they have. What typical hot topics come up in the closing protocols? And lastly, we completely empower a champion through a negotiation by aligning on all the relevant and priority negotiation guides. Depending on the champion's situation, these could be thresholds in our price to capabilities we include, commercial terms, or any other limitation or boundary that either of us may have. The objective of aligning on any negotiation guide is that neither one of us gets surprised, and we're both prepared to win the negotiation. By empowering our champion on any of our relevant negotiation guides, we enable them to safely and confidently sell and negotiate internally on our behalf. Elite sellers empower their champions so they can help them do what champions were made to do, to avoid getting outsold, and because our champions need us, we successfully lead the three empowerments that will remove work off the champion's plate. We enable them to successfully navigate the win across the justification for the purpose, the alignment of the consensus, and the empowerment of the negotiation. If there's other enterprise sales topics you want to hear about, share in the comments below, and I'd like you to answer this question. What have you found to be the most successful empowerment that you deliver for your champions? Friends, if I'm helping you in any way, be sure to bump that like, subscribe, and then click on the screen right now to watch another video helping you to master the human sell and elite level sales strategy. Thanks for watching.